What is going on, my beautiful people? I'm excited today because I'm up here in my shop getting rigged up for some upcoming fishing trips, and I wanted to stop and tell you guys what it is that I'm going to be throwing, why I'm going to be throwing it, and hopefully give you guys a few tips to catch more big bass this upcoming spring. Alright, so the way that I approach springtime fishing are really in two different kind of categories. I have my power category, I have my finesse category, and that's really all I'm going to be throwing. If it doesn't fall into those two categories, when I'm attacking a body of water, I'm not going to really throw it. When I'm talking about power fishing, I'm talking about covering a lot of water. I'm talking about covering the water column to try to locate the fish. Once I have those fish located, that's when I might either, if they're biting the search kind of bait, the power kind of bait, I might slow down and fish it a little more finesse to try to pick it apart. Generally in the springtime, the fish are deep, moving up into shallow water as the water temperature rises, and they tend to stay a little more grouped. So they're either going to be sitting on some sort of structure, or they're going to be schooling, trying to feed on some fish to get ready for that spawn system. And then of course, once the fish start to build beds and they start to spawn, we have to change our attack. But in this pre-spawn phase, that's when I'm going to be throwing these categories. So let's get over to the table and we are going to take a look at what I'm going to be starting off throwing when I'm first attacking this body of water. So up first we have my crankbait box here, and this is where I'm gonna probably be starting out. So when I am thinking about what to use, a couple of different categories come to mind. First, if the fish are shallow, we're talking jointed swim baits. These are some of my favorite. They give off a low profile but enough vibration that they're gonna catch some attention. Typically you'll get a little bit of a bigger bite, and the fish are going to be more hungry because they're trying to stock up for spawn, as I said earlier. This is an Academy brand jointed swim bait. It has a very good presentation. That one's in shad. I have one in baby bass, and a couple of more ones that I'm excited to try out this upcoming fishing season is the Contender by the Guggen Squad. I've heard some great things about this bait. I'm really excited to try it, and we're going to pin it against the good old-fashioned Mike Bucca's bull shad, which I'm sure you guys all have heard and seen being used. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used it yourself, and if you haven't, I highly recommend that you go pick up some of these because they are phenomenal lures. Alright, if the fish are going to be a little more suspended, or if they're not hitting the jointed swim bait, they might be wanting a little bit more of an aggressive kind of presentation. That's when you go into your lipless crankbaits, your rattle traps, anything along those lines. These are just a couple of the ones that I would throw. What I would tend to focus on is more of the red color. The reason that I'm going to focus on more of the red color is because crawfish are starting to spawn. They're going to be red looking for mates, and this is going to be a great representation of that. If you're still a little shallow and want a little more of an aggressive presentation and you don't want to throw a lipless, you can also go with something like a square bill. This just happens to be the mini banger, but any kind of square bill will work. This is in, I believe, their corn pop craw, which again is kind of mimicking a crawfish, same kind of reds, yellows with that design on there. So I think that any kind of square bill, lipless, or anything like that is going to be a little bit more of an aggressive presentation. It'll get you a couple more bites than the jointed swim baits, but if you're looking for the big bite, go with the jointed swim bait. In the power fishing category, I'm also going to be looking at jerk baits. So if the water is not quite warm enough, if you think it's still, you know, low 50s to high 40s, maybe even mid 50s, and the fish aren't super active, or at least they're not biting the jointed swim baits or the square bills, lipless, or anything like that, another great option you can go to is a jerk bait. Here are a couple different Rapala jerk baits, and then I'm not even sure who makes this jerk bait, but any kind of jerk bait is going to be a great presentation. You can work it super slow, give it a couple good jerks, let it pause. A lot of times the fish are going to hit it on the pause, especially if you have a suspending or slightly falling jerk bait. These are some really good ones that I've had for a long time. Caught a lot of fish on these, and this is one that I picked up last year. This is a little bit of a bigger presentation, looking again for those little bit of bigger bass, but this one has a good bit of rattle to it, so that's why I like this one. Again, jerk baits are always going to be a good lure for this time of year, this early spring, when the water temperatures are just now getting on the rise. Say you're fishing something a little bit more grassy and you don't want to constantly have to rip your lipless through that grass, a great option is a chatterbait. Chatterbaits are some phenomenal lures. They basically give the same presentation as a rattle trap. They just look slightly different, and to me, I like them because they're a little more weedless. So if you're wanting to rip your lipless through the grass to get that reaction style bite, you can, but you also have the option of bringing this right through the top, and a lot of times it'll attract just as many bites as the lipless will. And then if you want a more finesse style of a jerkbait, you can of course go with a fluke. You can weightless Texas rig flukes, and they are gonna work just like a jerkbait will. However, there won't be as much vibration, and they're gonna just be a slightly softer presentation. So if the fish are a little more finicky, of course you can always throw the fluke on there and try to discover those fish or locate those fish just like that. So those are what's going to cover my power fishing area. Again, these are going to be things that I'm going to be throwing as I'm paddling around in my kayak, trying to locate a school of fish or a group of fish. Once I find those, I'm going to continue to fish what those are, or to fish what I caught that first fish on, to see if the other fish are still going to be biting that. I might change it up if I caught one fish in a location and didn't get any other bites. And that's when I'm generally either going to speed it up or slow it down depending on what presentation I first caught the fish on. If I've made it through a couple of the different presentations in my power fishing section, I can still see fish on the graph or whatever it may be. I will then try to move to something a little bit slower depending on the structure that I'm fishing. Now, the first thing that I'm going to go to when slowing down is going to be a jig. I like the jig. It's a bit of a bigger presentation. Again, you might get some bigger bites. And fish are hungry right now because, again, they know that they're about to spawn, so they're wanting to stock up. So when they make the bed and they're sitting on the bed, they don't get too hungry too fast. So any kind of jig that you're going to find, of course, I would put a trailer on this, whether it be a craw, a chunk, anything like that. That way, again, you have a little more action to it. But this is always a phenomenal lure to be throwing. And again, maybe the fish that you're finding aren't eating the jig, and that is when you can go to something like a Ned rig. A Ned rig is a good choice here, or a shaky head. You always have the options of either of those two, and that's what I would recommend that you go to next, is the Ned rig, depending on the amount of finesse fishing that you're wanting to do, or the shaky head. Both of those are great options. You can even make something like a swinging jig head work, but I would try to keep it a little bit smaller at that point, because if they're going to hit something this size, they're going to hit that jig. So that's why I would recommend going with a Ned rig or a shaky head. And in my upcoming fishing videos, hopefully it's going to start getting warm enough. I should have went fishing today, but I did not, and so now it's a beautiful day and I'm stuck inside and can't go fishing. But I will be going fishing soon. I have some really great videos planned that I'm super excited to make. I got a new fish finder, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. We're going to get that mounted on the kayak, and that'll be an upcoming video. Got some camping trips planned, got some fishing trips, and then we got turkey season, and I am just super pumped about what 2021 is bringing so far. And we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We can get there, guys, but I need your help. So if you're watching this video and you've made it this far, come on, just turn that subscribe button gray, make the bell notification have the little emphasis around it, and become a beautiful person, man. We're a great army, we're growing, and there might even be some merch coming out soon. So hope you guys have enjoyed today's video, and we are going to go ahead and get in the verse of the week. And I know this is a verse that I have used before on this channel, but anytime I'm talking about finding fish, locating turkeys, locating deer, anything like this, it always reminds me of the verse that says, "Search me and you will find me." It always irritates me when people say that they can't find God, or they feel like God's not there, God's not listening, because in my experience, and in a lot of my friends' experiences, when you need God, He's already there because He never left. You may not feel Him, but are you doing what you need to do to try to find God? So hopefully this week you'll try to find God. Just, in a prayer one day, ask Him to spend the day with you. Just make that conscious effort to say, God, I want you to spend a day with me. And then spend your day like Jesus is right beside you, or God's right beside you, because they already are. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you find that inspirational. And always remember, everybody, when nature calls or God calls, you better answer. Peace.